Problem 25, the equation above expresses the approximate height in meters of a ball. So h represents the height, t represents the seconds after it is launched vertically up from the ground with initial velocity of 25 meters per second. That's where the 25 comes from. After how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? Well, here's our equation, and h represents the height. So if the ball is going to hit the ground, what is the height h going to be? Well, if the ball hits the ground, the height is 0. So I'm going to plug in h is 0, and I'm going to solve the resulting equation that I have for t time, because the question is saying after approximately how many seconds. So I'm solving for the time t if the ball is on the ground, if the height is 0. Now the way we're going to solve this is we're going to try to factor the right-hand side since there's a common factor of t. So I'm going to factor out a t, so I'm going to get negative 4.9t, and then I'm going to get plus 25. The way you solve quadratic equations is you try to factor them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set each factor equal to 0. T is a factor, so t is going to be equal to 0, and negative 4.9t plus 25 is a factor, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. And now I'm going to solve both of these equations. Here, the first equation is just t is equal to 0. So that means when the ball is shot up in the air at 0 seconds, so when the ball hasn't shot up yet, the height is going to be 0. And then now I'm going to solve this equation for the time. So here I'm going to subtract 25 on both sides. So I have negative 4.9t equals negative 25. And then here we're going to divide both sides by negative 4.9. So if you do on your calculator negative 25 divided by negative 4.9, you get t is equal to 5.102, and there's some more decimal seconds. So when the ball is in the air for 0 seconds, the height is 0, and when the ball is in the air for 5.1 seconds, the height is 0. So the ball is basically following a path of going up and then going back down. So here, approximately how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? It's going to be 5 seconds. Problem number 14 says a radioactive substance decays at an annual rate of 13%. If the initial amount of the substance was 325 grams, which of the following equations models the remaining amount of the substance in grams t years later? Well, you have this substance, and there's 325 grams when you start. It decays at a rate of 13%. So what does that mean? If it decays by 13%, it is now valued at 87% of what it was. If you start off with 100% of something, and it decays by 13%, if I subtract 13%, you're left with 87% of that something. So initially, you have 325 grams. If I want to figure out after 1 year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 325 and multiply it by 0.87, because it'll be worth 87% of what it was worth initially. So in this case, after 1 year, it's worth 282, or its weight is 282.75. After 2 years, it's basically going to be worth 87% of what it was the year before, or its weight is 87% of what it weighed before. So now I'm going to do 87% times that 282.75, so that means the weight is 245.9925. So it started off at 325, after a year it's 282 245.75. After 2 years, it's down to about 245.99, so 246. So which of the equations represents what's going on? Well, you're starting off with 325, and we multiplied it by 0.87 to get how many grams it weighs after 1 year. So we're taking 325 and multiplying it by 0.87 really to the first for the first year. After the second year, we're taking this 325 and multiplying it by 0.87 to the second power. Do 325 times 0.87 to the second power on your calculator, and you'll get that 245.9925 value. So that's why here the answer is letter A. Problem 3, which of the following is equivalent to the expression above? So the great thing about multiplication is that you can multiply in whichever order that you want. So here I'll just take the 3 and multiply it by the 2x plus 1 by distributing. So here I'm going to get 6x plus 3 times 4x plus 1. And now I'm going to FOIL. I'm going to multiply the firsts, 6x times 4x, or 24x squared. I'm going to do the outers, 6x times 1 to get 6x. Then I'm going to do the inners. I'm going to do 3 times 4x to get 12x. And then I'll do the lasts, 3 times 1 to give me 3. So here my answer is going to be 24x squared. These two can be combined to get 18x plus 3. Or letter C. Problem 7. The formula above gives the monthly payment M needed to pay off a loan of P dollars at R% annual interest over N months. Which of the following gives P in terms of M, R, and N? So basically this question is just asking you to take this equation and get that letter P by itself. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start off to get this letter P by itself, trying to get rid of this denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by that 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power, take away 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by that value. Now when I do that, basically what's going to happen is that this and this will cancel. So I'll basically have 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power minus 1 times that m. And then on the opposite side, now that my denominator is gone, I have r over 1200 times 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power times p. Now, to get this letter P by itself, I basically have r over 1200 times 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power times P. So I'm going to basically divide both sides by both of those expressions. I'm going to divide both sides by the r over 1200 and the 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power. So basically, here's what my answer is going to be. And now I have to see which answer choice kind of matches this big mess that I have going on. All of this is going to cancel, and now the letter P is by itself. So this is what the answer is. And here our answer is going to be answer choice B, because I have the 1 plus r over 1200 to the n power, take away 1, so that's all of this. The m is multiplied by the top. But another way of writing that is just multiplying out to the right. And then here are my two denominator terms, r over 1200 and 1 plus r over 1200 raised to the n power. So there, that big mess simplified to answer choice B. So number 14, if 3x minus y equals 12, what is the value of 8 to the x power over 2 to the y power? Now there has to be a reason why they're telling you 3x minus y equals 12. Let's see if that plays out in the question. What you're going to have to do to simplify what they gave you is rewrite it so that you have the same number raised to the powers. You can't simplify 8 to the x over 2y because up top the base is 8 and on the bottom the base is 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to simplify these two bases. And the key here is this. 8 is the same as 2 to the third power. So I have 2 to the y on the bottom. That's going to stay as is. 8 is the same as 2 to the third. So I have to basically take 2 to the third and raise it to the x power. Because up top I have 8 to the x power, and 8 is 2 to the third. So here I'm going to have 2, and then the rule is when you have a power raised to a power, 2 to the third to the x power, you multiply. On the bottom is going to stay as is, so 2 to the y power. And then here the exponent rule says when you're dividing, you subtract the exponents. So this here is the same as 2 to the 3x minus y. 2 to the 3x divided by 2 to the y. When you're dividing, you have the same base 2. You keep the base and you subtract the exponents. So here's where that 3x minus y comes in. Since they tell you 3x minus y is 12, this is the same as 2 to the 12th power, or answer choice A. So that was a question that used all different rules of exponents. Problem number 13, the equation above gives the height h in feet of a ball t seconds after it's thrown straight up at the initial speed of v feet per second from a height of k feet. Now there's all that vocabulary in there, but here is the question. Which of the following gives v in terms of all the other letters? You see how all the answer choices have letter v by themselves? So I'm going to take this equation and I'm basically going to try to solve it for letter v. I want to get this letter v by itself. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is try to get rid of this negative 16t by adding it to both sides. So I have the 16t squared, that is. So I'm going to add 16t squared to both sides. So I have h plus 16t squared. That equals, well, I have over here this vt plus k. Again, I'm trying to get the v by itself. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract both sides by k to get rid of this term. So here I'm going to have h plus 16t squared minus k. On the right-hand side, the k's are gone, so I have v times t. And now I want to get that v by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by t. So here's what I have. H plus 16t squared minus k all over t equals letter v. And in a perfect world, that would be there. But unfortunately, it's not. We're going to have to now try to simplify this side so that it matches one of the answers. Well, what can we do? Well, I noticed that this 16t squared has a factor of that t, but I can't cancel those t's right away. I can write 16t squared over t, but this other stuff, h and the minus k, that's still over t as well. So I can rewrite that as 16t squared over t. Now this h is positive, so plus h minus k over t. Now is that one of the answer choices? No. But now I can cancel this t, and since this is t squared, one of the t's up top, which means I just have 16t plus h minus k over t. And that is, I believe, answer choice D. It's kind of written backwards, but here's your h minus k over t, and then here's your plus 16t. So your answer is letter D.